Okay.
Hey, hey, welcome to Moms in Timeout. I'm joined today with Victoria. What a story. Mom of five, a doula, has her own business, but that's wasn't the plan originally. And I can't wait to dive in today to figure out how you get to where you are, being a successful business owner, raising five children, living in New York, doing all the things, wearing all of the hats, and still having a smile on your face each and every day.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Sarah. It definitely has been quite a journey. Um, as we've discussed before, not a straight line at all.
Mhm.
But that's just, I guess, what life brings. Life brings those ups and downs, and they shape us to the person that we are in present time.
Mhm.
I am a mom of five. I have five daughters. I did birth four, and my eldest out of the whole bunch is my beautiful bonus daughter, who, I was just blessed with marrying into the family. So I have a
Mhm.
beautiful bunch of five daughters, and I am a new small business owner of New Era Doula, which is pretty much a postpartum doula service, wellness service, and lactation and feeding services for new moms and birthing people in person in New York City and in Jersey City and the surrounding areas. And I also do offer virtual services as well for mamas that may not be too close or nearby. So that's what I do have available at the current time, which getting here on its own was a massive, just like wave of certain things.
Mhm.
Um, as of this year, actually, I returned to my corporate job that I was in for about 3 or 4 years prior to officially opening up my business this year. I returned from my own maternity leave for maybe the second time with this particular company.
Yeah, so let's give some people a perspective. How old is your youngest one? Because this one
Yeah,
kind of blew my mind.
my youngest one will be one actually on the 19th this month.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
that in a week and a half or so, maybe coming
Mhm.
up now. So she'll be 1 years old, well, 1 year old. And then the other four, 16, 10, 5, and 2.5.
I mean, could it get more complicated, really?
The different types of personalities is beyond me.
And all girls. So you're living my future, but like times 2.5,
Yeah.
essentially. So
Yeah,
walk us
having
through the
their
last year, because that's a big change. You were on maternity leave from this corporate position, and you
yeah.
went back, and then how did you land where you are now?
Yeah, so I mean, I have been doing doula work unknowingly for about 8 years. And I started doing this type of work, or I guess I can put it supporting my relatives and my neighbors in Chelsea as that go-to person, whoever needed assistance after giving birth, or just kind of needed that extra support at home with helping the baby transition, at home, and just like that immediate care that all
Mhm.
moms need after delivering, right? So I
Mhm.
was typically that go-to person that people would just call up, like, hey, call Victoria. She knows, like, she has a daughter. And at this time, I gave birth when I was 19, my first daughter. And,
Mhm.
everyone kind of saw me as like, oh, this young, very intelligent and hands-on mom. Why don't you give her a call? She seems to have the answers, right? And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm more than happy to show up and help. And it was all just based off of my own will to do it. It wasn't
Mhm.
something that I was being paid for over the last couple of years. This is something that I genuinely do enjoy doing, and something that comes
Mhm.
extremely naturally to me. So I'm always happy to be that go-to person for the families that are around in my neighborhood or relatives that are nearby, if I can. Um,
Mhm.
so with that being said, I on and off for the last 8 years have supported families postpartum. And I would say maybe 3 years ago, I realized that this is an actual role. And I'm like, you're telling me,
This is an actual career that you've been
yeah,
doing
like
for
I
free all this
do
time.
what I like, what I love, what comes naturally to me, and kick like the 9 to 5 kind of thing without like the
Mhm.
stress and like the pressure and all this. So I started to look deeper into this role and how I can make it an official career for me. And actually, that's what I started to do last year. Last year, when I was pregnant with my fourth daughter, my fourth pregnancy, I decided to take my official doula training with Doula International.
Mhm.
Went through all the workshops and necessary requirements for me to legitimize everything that I was doing, and also planning to give birth myself. So
Talk about
definitely,
living it as you go through
yeah,
it, like live it as
yeah,
you build it.
definitely going through all the feels of it. Just transitioning and checking in with myself constantly, because at that point in time, I already knew deep down inside that the current position that I was in that corporate role, I had a corporate sales role, was
Mhm.
only a temporary gig for me. And, these are things that, of course, occasionally will pop into my mind when I am frustrated with the role and like, I can't do this kind of thing. But
Mhm.
last year, it really set in my heart that this was just not going to work out. And it certainly is temporary for me. Um, and that's what kind of shifted me to look deeper into what I actually enjoy doing most. And that's being a support system for other families, and, just kind of adopting other families and extending that olive branch of support. So, just kind of juggling that and my role then as a corporate salesperson and preparing to give birth again for the fourth time, it was a lot
Mhm.
to juggle. And that was not easy. And it took a lot
Mhm.
of constant checking in with myself and where I want to be and who I am, and am I living my purpose? And am
Mhm.
I being 100% authentic with myself and truthful with myself? Because that is what I believe in.
Mhm.
And, shortly after I started to prepare for my birth and, leave the role temporarily again, I made some hard decisions and I decided to kind of take a lot of my power back after I gave birth. And
Mhm.
this time around was very different compared to, the other three times after I gave birth, where I didn't quite bond with my children as much as I wanted to or would have liked to, because I was immediately forced back into like having to work and provide for my family and just kind of get back
Mhm.
into it and figure out how all of these things are going to work, because I have a family to feed. It's not just
Mhm.
me and my eldest at that point. Now I have several other daughters. I have a
Yeah.
husband, I have things going on and bills need to get paid, right?
Mhm.
Um, and during this time of my maternity leave, I enjoyed so much of it. I ended up extending my time, not only just to bond with my baby, of course, but to really enjoy my postpartum. And the way that I would come in and make sure that everyone else's postpartum experience was as needed and what they deserved, I gave that
Mhm.
to myself. That was my gift to myself. And during that time, I was able to get certified as a yoga instructor. I was able to get certification as a lactation and feeding specialist, an herbalist. All these great things were just coming because I was a lot more in my element, and
Mhm.
focusing. And again, the constant checking back in. Okay, well, I did my yoga certification. What can I do next? How can I expand my
Mhm.
knowledge and make sure that the type of service and care that I'm providing to other moms and other birthing people is just top notch? What can I do
Mhm.
next? Um,
That's
and
one thing that really stood out the first time we talked, like, one, just the courage to jump ship on a corporate situation, like the guaranteed. Like, there's a lot of
right,
people that like, "I have this passion, but how do I make it possible in order to
absolutely.
do it?" And, I mean, you're living proof that it's happening, and you did it, and you took care of yourself in a way that I think most moms just don't in that postpartum time period.
It's
And
hard. It's certainly hard. It's
Mhm.
not easy at all. And when people ask me about it, I'm like, imposter syndrome is real. It's like you kind of have to like go against what your mind is telling you and
Mhm.
just do what feels right for you. And I
Mhm.
feel like with that, it carries you through the entire process alone.
And I love that phrase that you use so often is taking your power back. So
Yes,
not only like as a mom and as a new mom, again, like with an infant, but with your partner also, because I'm sure there had to be some conversations to be had of you doing this, because there's a
absolutely.
lot of other people involved, like there is always.
Yeah, so there's so many moving parts to postpartum, right? So many different roles, new tasks to kind of like transition or share or just ultimately don't do it all. And my favorite word during postpartum was no. No, I'm not doing that. No,
Mhm.
I'm not going to just say what you want me to say. No.
Mhm.
And it was, again, very different from when the first 3 times after I gave birth, I didn't have the courage to say no. And I
Mhm,
didn't have the courage to respect my own boundaries. And with my
mhm,
partner, my husband, it was a struggle for him. It was certainly a struggle for him to kind of take most of the home workload onto his plate. And he didn't
mhm,
necessarily understand why. And,
mhm,
to a certain degree, yes. For a while, after the first two, it's like, yeah, I was a little bit more lenient. I'm still doing tasks that I can keep up with. But now I'm going to tell you no. I've done it
mhm,
before, and we saw how that did not benefit me.
mhm,
And it's not, don't think of it as being selfish. It's not selfish at all. This is a space of healing for me. And
mhm.
I need to make sure that I am my best self before any one of you guys.
That's what I remind people all literally daily of like, you can't, you can't give if you're not feeling well yourself. If you're at a 0, how do you give anything? Like it's not how it works. So, especially having been with your husband for your other 2, your middle 2 kids and
Yeah.
seeing a different transition, I can imagine. I mean, it was probably challenging all over the board because
Yeah.
has seen this, he has lived this. It was a certain way the first 2, 3 times that you gave birth. And now it's this last time and you're like, yeah, this is no longer working for me.
Not at all. He hated it. I can honestly, he will probably never admit this, but I'm 100% certain he's like, oh, she is, oh no, I know for a fact.
Mhm,
And, I can sympathize with it and I can understand it, but it's time for a change. Like, mommy needs a break. I need to
mhm,
really dig deep and figure out who I am, what I want to do next. Because if there was one thing that was for certain at that time, is that I'm done with corporate.
yes.
I'm over it. It's not suitable for us. And at that time, I was also working remotely. And
Mhm,
just the energy that it came with, the role and everything combined, it brought all of this negative energy into my home.
mhm,
And, now it's bigger than just it affecting my role. It's
mhm,
now affecting my whole household and everybody that's in it. And that was something that I also had to explain to him during that process. It's like, I'm not going back to this role for a long time. Like, when I return, is going to be short and simple. And I,
mhm.
I felt that in my soul. And it was, honestly.
Yeah.
When I got there, I returned for a month. And that was,
Mhm. Yeah.
and in April, that's when everything kind of just shifted the way that it needed to, after just trusting my intuition. And with me, like, yes, I have my God and I trust the universe and all these magical things, but just really
Mhm,
being in alignment with my purpose and knowing that,
mhm,
yes, this is temporary. Do not try to force anything else on my plate. um,
mhm.
and just praying on it, like, okay, what do I do next? I can't just like get up and leave. I got bills to pay. I got kids
Yeah.
to take care of.
Mhm,
What do I do next? And the little voice in my head just kept saying, be patient. Just wait. It's going to come. It's going to come. And
mhm,
it did, an exact month after I returned from work. Um, and I got pretty much what I prayed for. And it was the
mhm,
opportunity to move on to the next chapter of my life in,
mhm.
a secure way without it being a financial issue for my family
Yeah.
overall. And from there, things just gradually on its own developed in this beautiful moment, and where I am right now. And it's been incredible.
And I love your story so much. And I know there's listeners that are like, but what's step one? Like you make it sound like it was not that it was easy for you, but you make it sound like, yeah, this is what you do. You take your power back. And these are the conversations you had. But how did it start? So if someone's in a position that they feel like they really do need to take their power back, set a boundary, however they want to word it, where do you think is a good place for them to start?
I would say start first with what you need. Just check in with yourself, see what is it that you need the most. And then remove the idea of how that decision will affect everyone else. Because I feel
Mhm.
like when we are trying to decide what works best for us or not, we include everyone else's opinions and how it would then affect them.
Oh, yes.
It never really is about us at the end of the day, because we're moms and we're trying to care for everyone and make sure everything is taken care of. Let
Mhm.
it go. Just let it go for a moment and think about what you need first.
I love that.
Yes. So I would say that's the first step. You are first. You're number one. If mom is not okay, no one else is okay.
And that's what remind people of it, of just like, you don't need to ask for permission. You're allowed to take care of yourself as well. And then how about that conversation? How did that start with your husband of you taking your power back? What is like, do you remember those first couple conversations of, and I'm sure his reactions are ingrained in your mind, but how did that conversation start on like, this just needs to be different? Like, this is not going to be like it was the first few times around?
I would honestly say that in the beginning, the very beginning, I don't think it was a real conversation. I think it was just me showing him, like, oh, hell no. Like,
Hmm.
it's about me now. And when he started to feel the weight of the workload at home, that's when the doors of that conversation opened and we had to check
Hmm.
in with each other. And he expressed, like, I'm feeling like I'm doing way more than you are. And
Hmm.
initially, my first response was, oh, the audacity of this guy. Who does he think he is? Right. And then I kind of had to, like, pull myself out of the ego moment and just,
Yeah.
you know, be neutral about it. And I'm like, I understand your frustrations and how this may feel like mommy is just not doing anything anymore. But the reality is, I'm not. And the reason why I am not is because I did not do well the first time, the second time, the third time, and I would hate for me to repeat that all over again when I know that
Mhm.
my postpartum experience can be a lot better. And
Mhm.
kind of having him understand, like, I go out of my way to make sure that the type of support that I give my moms that I know, that I'm in contact with, the utmost respect and nurturing space to heal. And
Mhm.
I'm also deserving of that. And I had to ask him, do you think that I'm deserving of that?
Mhm.
Of course, the answer is yes.
What
You're gonna tell me
what a
yes.
great, I love asking questions that I know the answer to.
Yeah, you're gonna tell me yes. We both understand that I am deserving of this. I have your support, but right now, I would really love for my husband to be on the same page with me when it comes to these tasks because I am choosing to step back from it. I need to step
Mhm.
for my own sanity.
Well, I think it's so powerful too that now you're a doula and in this space of supporting other moms and people giving birth, and that you've lived not the rainbows and unicorns journey. Because a
Right.
lot of doulas I meet had a great experience postpartum, had a great experience. And it's like, well, that it's great that you had a great experience. I am one that did not have a great experience the first time around. So it's interesting that you come in with a very different perspective of like, no, I've struggled, struggled, struggled and then learned how to do this. So it's very interesting. So talk about with the moms that you work with, what kind of struggles do they have? Because I know a lot of people listening, maybe they have had issues, but maybe they were rainbows and unicorns. They loved every minute of bringing baby home and everything went smooth for them. But what are some things that you run into?
The many, many things that I do see often are the anxieties that come with
Mhm.
the role. And I would say that is the number one thing that a lot of my clients do experience all at once. And
Mhm.
the anxieties, just from my own perspective coming in, is just trying to juggle everything together.
Yeah.
There's not a moment to think about what to do first. And
Mhm.
you're juggling all these thoughts, you're juggling all these tasks while trying to learn your newborn baby, while trying to heal, while trying
Mhm.
to maintain your marriages, your relationships, your partnerships. And
Mhm.
now we're like in a space where, people are worrying about how to survive financially and just
Mhm.
make things happen. And that just layers and just adds on to one another, well, on top of each other, and
Mhm.
creates so much anxiety for my moms. And
Mhm.
what I try my best to do is to hear them out and validate their feelings and their thoughts and remind them that these thoughts are okay. They're going
Mhm.
to occur, they're going to transpire, you're going to think these things up because it just kind of like comes
Yeah.
on its own. But to also learn how to focus on one thought at a time
Mhm.
and kind of put like little tabs on what to think of first or what matters first or what is most important to you right now. And
Mhm.
just going through that long line of their lists, checking in, and whatever is not important, whatever does not need to happen right now, we just kind of leave it for
Yeah.
later. Just tossing it out there.
So
So
really just doing that, dealing with the prioritization of everything,
yes.
of like that there is, and it's not just, remind people, it's not just first time moms.
No.
It's moms that are introducing a second child in the mix, or a
Yeah.
third or fourth or fifth. Like there's all of these things that can come around. It's not just the first time you become a mom that you could
Right.
feel all these things and have all these different emotions. And at birth to birth, you've done it 4 times, or it can be all very different. And the feelings and the thoughts can be very different.
Absolutely. It's not just for first time moms at all. It's for
Hmm.
all moms. You know, with each birth, you're also being reborn yourself. A new person is being born as well. So you're not the same individual that you were maybe 30 minutes before the baby popped out. You're a
Hmm.
completely new person. And even that, we are struggling to identify who we are then at that point. It's
Always.
almost like a little identity crisis that we go through after each birth. We're
Hmm.
mourning the old versions of ourselves, you know?
Hmm. Which is
And
totally normal. And people don't really
it is,
talk about that, of
right.
that
They
mourning
don't talk about it,
process.
and I feel like they don't also realize that that's what's happening either.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That you have all these feelings and you're like, why do I have all these feelings? And then of course you
Mhm.
throw in the mom guilt of, I shouldn't be feeling like this. I
Yeah,
should be feeling blessed that this happened and that I have this child. And it's a lot of layers of emotions. So I
absolutely.
love that you like tackle that and work through it with your mamas. How does it work remotely? Because I know there's a lot of people, especially that are not in big cities and don't have a ton of resources and can't have a doula come with them like, along the way, like you would picture, like, before and in the hospital, and then after. It's not always an option. So how do you work with people remotely?
Yeah, so pretty much, depending on the client, we can, hop on a Zoom call,
Mhm,
maybe FaceTime. I usually like the FaceTime call because I feel like it's a lot more personable. Like it's not really like a business kind of setup. I
mhm,
truly like to feel like I am a part of the family. So if I could just call you and say, "Hey, girl, like, how are you
mhm.
feeling today?" And just kind of checking in. We're constantly having long talks. That's what our FaceTime calls usually are about, or if there are any issues with lactation and feeding,
Yeah.
bottle feeding, whatever that may look like for the mom, those are things that we are covering on the call as well. And if their partners are joining in, I'm quickly touching base with their partners, just kind of opening up that safe space for them to learn along the way and really receive the support that they're looking for. And
Mhm.
a lot of the times it is much of the listening work, right? We're
Yeah.
listening and not necessarily giving opinions because that's not what it's about. It's about what works for that family because every
Mhm,
family is different and every family has different needs. So just
mhm,
constantly listening to the things that they are experiencing, offering rooms for suggestions or recommendations that they can apply, to their own benefits. They don't necessarily have to do and say everything that comes from me, but just kind of
mhm,
giving them the resources that they can utilize and apply where it fits for them.
mhm,
And like the way that you and I are talking right now, like it's just face to face, although it's not physical and in person, but still kind of creating that intimate relationship building with the
mhm,
client and letting them know, like, I'm available to you whenever you need me. You give me a call, you send me a text. And
mhm.
for me, I think it's also important because even during that time, it's really hard to process the information that you receive on the call. So I do like to follow up with a text or an email with any resources that were discussed and shared on those calls. That way they can go
Mhm.
back and look at it again and just kind of review it at their own time as needed.
Which, with that mom fog, with that
Yeah,
brain fog coming after birth, I mean, a
it's
recap, it would be
necessary. Just kind of,
necessary for sure.
yeah, keeping just like that paper trail of resources and just covering what we talked about today.
Mhm,
That way they have it available if ever they need to refer back to it because it is hard postpartum. You can't remember anything. Freaking brain
mhm.
is melting all day long. Like, I think it's really
And
important to send those. Yeah. So it
to
kind of works
me,
out like that.
a huge part that stood out is just that check-in. So I dealt with some pretty severe postpartum depression, anxiety, and utter rage that we spoke about on our first call. And the second time, my second birth, I was living in Baltimore, and there was a study at Johns Hopkins University with postpartum issues, they called them. It was kind of a broad spectrum. and it was literally weekly check-ins, and what a difference. And this
Yeah.
was a woman that I didn't know from anything. I was assigned she was assigned to me, but
Yeah.
just the checking in and someone asking me and wanting an honest answer of rating what I was feeling, how I was feeling, what my sleep was like, all of these things, just to have someone check in on me, what a difference that would have made the first time around. Because I
Yeah.
think if I had a secure person that I knew that I wouldn't be judged by saying the things I felt like I needed to say, it would have been a game changer for me through my journey. So I'm so glad that you are that support for women.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly love to just be that person. Like,
Mhm.
just lay it on me. Tell me what's on your mind. Like, I want to know the real hard, like, core, even the bad stuff. You think it's like you shouldn't
Mhm.
say it. Like, tell me. Tell me,
Mhm.
because I want to be able to support you the best way that I can, and I want to let you know that it's okay to feel these things. It's our right to
Mhm.
think these things. And guess what? It is what it is.
And being in this space, you've heard it. It's not like when I remember when I finally said it out loud to a therapist and she's like, "This is normal." And I'm
Yes.
like, "This can't be normal." And she's like, "It is normal. This is
Yeah.
not like you think it's like the worst thing ever." And it's like this is what happens when your hormones are going crazy and your brain fog
Yes.
is real and the pressure is real and all of these things. So having that trusted space can make such a difference.
Absolutely. It certainly does. And just, I feel like it also creates that moment of processing what you're actually going through when you're saying it
Mhm.
out loud and you are acknowledging what is going on deep within you. You're just laying it out on the table and then you're leaving it there.
Mhm.
And that kind of just removes this big, weight off of your shoulders, and it makes you
Yeah.
lighter. You no longer have to hold it within and feel like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't think these things, or I shouldn't feel like
Mhm.
this. Like, you're laying it all out, you're leaving it there, and you're going about your day. You're welcoming
Mhm.
like the new things that are coming.
Yeah, and I love that. The ability to let it go and the ability to have someone remind you that you do have power, you do have control over some of this stuff. And you do have power of what you leave and what you take with you. And
But
we
yeah,
forget that sometimes.
those beautiful reminders.
Mhm. So
Necessary.
how can people find you? If they're interested in chatting or getting to know a little bit more that they do, whether they're in the mood for a doula or not, but I'm sure there'd be questions. How can people reach out?
Well, thanks for asking. People are more than welcome to find me on social media. I am on Facebook and I'm also on Instagram at New Era Doula. I'm also online on my website, which is www.neweradoula.com. You're more than welcome to submit like an inquiry form or shoot me an email. And I'm happy to connect, just little quick chats, always open to them.
So you did this for so long, for not your career, for just everyone that you loved in your life, which is so powerful. So clearly it's a gift. And thank you so much for sharing it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I love it. Last piece of advice. If you're a pregnant mom out there and you're thinking like, that's a lot, like, what am I going to do? What's your biggest piece of advice for people that are about to give birth?
I would say my biggest piece of advice for those who are about to give birth: take a deep breath in and release it. With that breath out, just release all the thoughts, the anxieties that you have going on. Give yourself grace and know that you've made it this far. You're about to give birth to a beautiful little being who's going to call you mommy, mama, whatever it is. And just welcome that opportunity and embrace it. It's going to be the most beautiful time for you, and you deserve every ounce of happiness within that moment.
So perfectly said. Thank you so much, Victoria.
Thanks, Sarah.
This was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your gifts and hope everyone listening has a great day.
Well, have a good day, guys.